Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, March 25th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. 900 jobs, tens of millions in revenue, and a fun place for families. We begin tonight with the opening of a new local theme park, just in time for spring and as the pandemic eases. Not to mention some characters with a history here on our channel. KPBS reporter MG Perez on the big economic boost for the South Bay.
This is the first official parade at the new Sesame Place. All the beloved Muppets are here to welcome visitors to a rebranded theme park now run by SeaWorld Entertainment and the Sesame Workshop, the company that produces the powerhouse educational series Sesame Street.
You want the Cookie Monster one, or you want this one?
The Michaels family from Chula Vista is here to spend money and enjoy the outdoors, something they have not done for a while, as the COVID pandemic battered their finances and future.
Rough homeschooling, having to leave jobs, having to find new jobs because, companies go under, but it's really heartwarming to be able to come and do something like this.
There's new stuff, new names. It's all new. It looks like a whole different place, and I'm excited to try out all the new rides.
There are 18 rides, 7 of them considered dry, the other 11 very wet. These 17 acres of land housed Aquatica, the former SeaWorld attempt at a water park that closed last year. The Aquatica footprint is still very much here, along with some familiar faces. 600 of the former seasonal workers were hired back, along with 300 new employees. The new hires include performers who join Muppet characters in a stage show at this theater built for the park. It seats up to 800 people.
It's not uncommon at our company to see people start here in high school, for example, and work their way through in college and end up, working here full time.
This year, Forbes named SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment as one of America's best large employers. Its affiliation with Sesame Street helps the park build on its reputation for education.
What are kids experiencing right now? What's important? And we try to design a curriculum that reflects those specific needs of children at that moment. So every season of Sesame Street is actually built on a new curriculum.
And there's no sugarcoating it, especially when you find your way to Sesame Street and Oscar.
Leave me alone and get lost.
MG Perez, KPBS News.
A rally aimed at sending a strong message that time is running out when it comes to protecting our environment wrapped up moments ago downtown. It involved local students who joined with others around the world concerned over climate change. And KPBS reporter John Carroll is live at the County Administration Building with the message they're sending to the governor. John?
That's right, Maya. The protest did wrap up a short time ago. They've all left now, so it's quiet. But earlier this afternoon, scores of young people raised their voices in a common goal, nothing short of saving the planet. The full name of this protest really tells you what it's all about. The People Not Profit Global Climate Strike. The students here left their various high schools this afternoon on unexcused absences, except for the group from San Diego High School. They did get excused to participate. The students say they're striking on behalf of the nearly 2 billion people between the ages of 10 and 24. They're demanding Governor Newsom take 3 different actions: stop issuing new permits for oil and gas drilling, stop the current extraction operations around the state, and institute 3,200-foot health and safety setbacks for people living in the vicinity of extraction operations. Here's more from the 2 student organizers, senior Natalia Armenta from High Tech High and sophomore Kiala Minacho from Canyon Crest Academy.
This is the first step we need to take. We need to have a transition to more renewable and sustainable energy, because keep investing in the fossil fuel industry is only going to lead to more destruction. So we do see that there can be a lot of pushback onto the governor doing this, but this is the first steps that we need to take to really create the future that we want.
This is a youth organized strike, but this is a really intergenerational strike because we recognize the need to work across generations and work with different people in this movement. Because it's not just the youth and it's not just the younger generations that are going to fix this, it's all of us together.
Natalia and Kiala tell me their next move is to bring their demands to the San Diego City Council. They're going to ask that they write a letter and otherwise put pressure on Governor Newsom to take those 3 actions. Live at the County Administration Building, John Carroll, KPBS News.
President Biden is getting a first-hand look at the war refugee crisis in Poland. This as Ukrainian forces are on the counterattack against Russian troops. The latest now from reporter Chris Nguyen.
More than a month since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine, a potential turning point as Ukrainian forces retake towns on Kyiv's eastern outskirts, according to the UK Defense Ministry, with the Ukrainian officials saying forces are going on the counterattack in the capital region.
Every sign of support counts, beginning from, a hug, a word, and most importantly, of course, just the sign of unity on the side of the West, NATO, the readiness to help.
But the human devastation continues to take its toll. Citing eyewitness reports, officials in Mariupol now believe close to 300 people died in a Russian attack on a theater there 9 days ago.
I don't think that nobody abroad can understand truly what just happened in my hometown. Can't even imagine. Living in the basement is not the worst thing happening in the Mariupol. Like, this town turned into a ghost.
Friday, President Joe Biden was in Poland meeting with personnel from the 82nd Airborne Division.
The finest fighting force in the history of the world. And that's not hyperbole. You have to say it again. And so thank you for what you do. Thank you for all you've done.
The White House says the president's visit was intended to highlight the war's mounting refugee crisis. More than 3.6 million people have fled Ukraine since the start of the invasion, according to UN estimates. Chris Nguyen, KPBS News.
San Diego County officials say they stand ready to help Ukrainian refugees. At the same time, local organizations continue collecting supplies for those still in Ukraine. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has more.
Hello, Wilma. How are you?
Greg Angel and his volunteers at Interfaith Community Services are hard at work doing what they do best, help those in need in North County.
We help more than 22,000 neighbors in North County every year with food, shelter, housing, wraparound support services.
But on Saturday, they'll be using their network to help people thousands of miles away in Ukraine. They're holding a medical supplies drive from 10 a.m. to noon at San Pasqual Union School in Escondido.
And when these things happen, our response is always bringing people together to support one another, in this case through needed medical donations.
Thank you. And that's music to the ears of another volunteer at the House of Ukraine. Oksana Mushenko is a refugee who just arrived here with her family from Ukraine. She's overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. It's I don't know. I haven't enough words to say thank you. Each American people.
The House of Ukraine has been collecting everything from protection for soldiers to money. People come here to show their support. Some buy T-shirts, others donate what they can.
We wanted to do something.
And on this day, one man who didn't want to be identified showed up as we were interviewing Oksana to give her his casino winnings.
$100.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you so much, sir. Okay.
This is for your family. This is another $50. That's for...
You have
just
a big heart.
She says she'll send most of it to her mother, who is still in Ukraine.
She's staying in Kharkiv. It's near.
In Kharkiv? Yeah, it's very bad there.
And the rest will be used to help her children, who are in a country they don't know, but already loves them.
God bless you. We'll give you a hug.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
As the Biden administration faces a decision to end or extend sweeping restrictions on asylum, new numbers show COVID-19 rates are plunging among migrants crossing the border from Mexico. Lower rates raise more questions about scientific grounds for a public health order. That caused migrants to be expelled from the U.S. more than 1.7 million times since March 2020 without a chance to request asylum. While there's no aggregate rate for migrants, test results from several major corridors for illegal border crossings suggest it is well below levels that have triggered concerns among U.S. officials. Early COVID indicators show that the virus's transmission is growing. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman has more on what local sewage could be telling us.
Wastewater has proven to be a leading indicator of the virus's spread. Viral load in the sewage goes up before the number of cases starts rising, and recently data from 3 local treatment plants shows that the amount of COVID is climbing.
I don't think people should be overly alarmed about this early uptick. We're keeping an eye on it, and as a health system, we're taking precautions.
Christopher Longhurst is UC San Diego Health's chief medical officer. He says in response to the increases, they are testing more patients and resuming masking in areas where it was previously optional.
The community standards right now are very reasonable for a relatively low prevalence of disease. So if you've got underlying disease or you're otherwise at high risk, take note, be cautious. I think for the rest of us, let's keep an eye on what's going on.
Longhurst says about 80% of the COVID found in the wastewater is being identified as the BA2 subvariant of Omicron. That strain is more contagious and likely what's driving surges in Europe.
We're not really sure what's going to happen. It's unusual and unexpected that we're seeing another surge so quickly after the last one. On the other hand, we know that the antibodies that this virus creates probably wash out after just 3 or 4 months, which means that the people who got infected back in December are susceptible yet again.
Longhurst says the good news is that the BA2 variant appears to be less severe than previous strains. He says COVID booster doses are especially important for those who are at high risk. San Diego County has one of the state's lowest booster rates. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
If you are someone who has yet to get a COVID vaccination or are in need of another dose, then you're in luck. KPBS Speak City Heights reporter Jacob Ayer tells us about an event tomorrow aimed at getting those shots in arms. And that's not all.
Amid the recent lift on COVID-19 restrictions, City Heights organizations are teaming up to increase vaccination rates in the community. Mid-City Can and the Employee Rights Center are set to host a vaccine clinic tomorrow from noon to 4 p.m. They've been doing this since June. Tomorrow's clinic will offer free flu and COVID-19 vaccines, including first and second doses of Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, and boosters for anyone ages 5 and up.
A no appointment, monthly, last Saturday month like ours kind of efforts, give people a time to plan and to make sure they don't have to miss work.
Although COVID-19 cases are on a steady decline, City Heights and surrounding neighborhoods continue to have lower vaccination rates than other parts of San Diego. Mid-City Can's Alexis Carter says that's translating into good turnout.
We actually saw a very big increase, to which we were looking at like 300 people per event, with like over 200 vaccinations, flu shots, as well as completely depleting the resources that we had brought for the community.
In addition to vaccines, people will be able to get at-home COVID tests and masks, along with supplies like food packages, diapers, feminine hygiene products, and even gardening seeds, all for free.
Tomorrow we'll also have cancer breast exams and mammographies, and the county is going to be here with a mobile clinic to do sign-ups for medical emergency and expanded medical.
The vaccines will be available on a walk-in basis with no appointment required. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
A recruiting event is wrapping up right now involving the Sheriff's Department. It was part of an open house for those who are interested in becoming a sheriff's deputy. Candidates got to meet department personnel and learn more about careers in law enforcement. But open positions are not limited to sworn deputies. There is a need for nurses, dispatch operators, mental health clinicians, as well as a fingerprint examiner.
First person that you hear, and then we're going to get you either the police, the fire, or the paramedics, or whatever help that you need. So day to day we answer 911 and non-emergency calls, and then other half of us are also dispatching to deputies on the radio side.
All positions as well as online application forms can be found on the sheriff's website. The Golden State is leading the nation in economic recovery. The latest numbers show California created a fifth of the nation's jobs in February. 138,100 positions were added, outpacing every other state. It's also the biggest number since July of last year. California has now regained about 87% of the jobs lost during March and April of 2020 because of the pandemic. 1.3 million positions have been created since January of last year. We should know in the coming days if local supermarket workers are willing to go on strike. SDSU's Miro Kopik tells us what's different this time around in the Friday Business Report.
As many as 47,000 workers across 500 stores in Southern California can walk off the job. This is comparable to the last time there was an actual strike in 2003. And what's interesting and what really irks the workers right now is that because of the labor shortage, so unlike 2003 where unemployment was in the 5 or 6% and there were people that could actually come in and do these jobs, companies cannot find workers. These chains have been hiring workers at above the average salary of the existing employees. And so that certainly the employees realize that chains can actually pay more if necessary. So it's a very interesting tightrope that both the union and the management are going to be running. But it seems like the vote will probably move forward to an authorization, and I think it'll require both sides to really begin negotiating in earnest next week when the vote results are tallied.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the news, our President Biden visits Poland, where more than 2 million Ukrainians have sought refuge from Russia's invasion. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The recent wave of high temperatures has climate scientists concerned. As Mike Nico explains, it's not just the number of record heat waves, but also where they're happening that's causing alarm.
Take a high-resolution spin around our home planet, and you begin to get a feel for the vast distance and geographic differences between the Earth's northern Arctic regions and the southern continent of Antarctica. But in recent days, the polar opposites shared more than glaciers in common, with areas of the Arctic experiencing temperatures 50 degrees above normal. At the same time, weather stations near the South Pole logged readings roughly 70 degrees warmer than average, and the spike is anything but normal, according to Peter Rupnarine of the California Academy of Sciences.
And so the warm temperatures first are unusual. The second thing that is unusual is that they're both warm at the same time because they're opposite seasons.
Of course, moderates the temperature.
Right. Assistant Planetarium Director Bing Kwok zoomed us in for a closer look. Experts say the exact forces at work can be complicated, especially in Antarctica, where historic temperature data is limited. And fluctuations in ocean warming, as well as surface heat, also likely play a part.
And we don't know. Is this something that happens every 50, 70 years or so in Antarctica, and so it's not unusual? We really don't know. And so is it tied to global warming? Is it going to begin happening every year? We don't know.
In the north, studies have already suggested the Arctic is warming several times the rate of the rest of the planet. Teams from NASA JPL have been monitoring the effect on massive ice sheets in areas like Greenland. They say while the recent temperature spikes may be unusual, the melting already being observed raises significant concerns.
These are anomalies. We don't know why they occur, but we do know that there's warming occurring, especially in the oceans around Antarctica. We know that the atmosphere and the climate is warming generally in the Arctic.
The answers to the polar riddle could ultimately have direct implications to the Bay Area. The melting of ice sheets in the Arctic and potentially Antarctica is already considered a major risk factor in significant sea level rise, and one of the long-term risks of rising temperatures.
Some big-time changes moving in for us the next couple of days, as we already have noticed that coastal push coming in. It's limiting a lot of the heat across our area, so kind of a welcome thing with the extra clouds. That can be a bit of a problem, but overall, we're talking about cooler air finally arriving. And it's all ahead of this storm arriving Sunday night that could bring us more than a ½ inch of rain in spots. Very welcome setup, but of course that does lead to the risk for flash flooding. Tonight, we can find those coastal clouds really streaming their way back in. 60 for the low in San Diego. Head to Escondido, 48. 64 in Borrego Springs. As we transition into tomorrow, there's still a lot of warmth through the interior southwest. We, again, will have, at least by the coast, more of those clouds to break way to sunshine, and that's going to limit how high those numbers actually get. 70 is the high in San Diego. Chula Vista coming in at 70. As you head towards Borrego Springs, though, you'll find those numbers getting into the mid-90s. So that's the difference that we have, again, with that coastal influence. As we get into Sunday night, here comes this storm system, bringing rain right into our area, and at times some very heavy rain heading into Monday. So do expect some travel delays as we start off next work week. You can identify here Monday looking pretty wet, the heaviest rain coming in the morning for the coast. Temperatures in the mid-60s for highs, and that cool air kind of lingers around into Tuesday, too. As we venture into the inland communities, possibly a thunderstorm coming through. We can't rule out maybe some small hail trying to mix in with some of these storms. Temperatures again falling through the 60s and really staying on the cooler side as we close out the weekend. Mountain communities also seeing that chance for some showers and thunderstorms, getting a bit breezy as the storm system comes ashore. And it does begin on Sunday with that cool down, highs in the upper 50s. For the desert communities, there's the chance for some rain on Monday, but that's after a very warm stretch here Saturday, hot and still pretty mild on Sunday. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
It is quite the sight every year in our nation's capital as the iconic cherry blossoms that circle the tidal basin in Washington, D.C. have reached peak bloom. The Yoshino cherry trees were a gift of friendship from the people of Japan to the people of the United States back in 1912. The National Cherry Blossom Festival ends on April 17th. San Diego Opera turns to Shakespeare's famous tale of star-crossed lovers for its second grand opera since returning to live performances at the Civic Theater. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando goes behind the scenes of the classic French opera Romeo and Juliet.
The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet is fueled as much by the love shared by the title characters as it is by the hate displayed by their feuding families. Perhaps no one in the new San Diego Opera production understands those dueling passions better than Doug Schultz-Carlson.
I'm the intimacy director and the fight choreographer. A lot of intimacy direction came out of fight direction, and a lot of the principles are the same. The biggest difference is intimacy direction is really very concerned with affirmative consent, so that the performers have the chance to consent to everything that they're going to do in the course of the performance.
In the case of Romeo and Juliet, it's a progression from flirting to touching to kissing. And in Matthew Ozawa's production, the singers get to shine on a gorgeously designed but very spare set, says Schultz-Carlson.
The gestures that are being made by the sets and the lighting are beautiful, but they're really stark, and that means the performers really can shine. So like for the intimacy, when they're coming together, they don't have a lot of set pieces that they're traveling across or anything. You're watching how the two of them are touching each other and how they're getting closer and how they kiss. The whole story is in what the performers are doing.
That goes for the intimacy of close combat in fight scenes as well.
But yeah, when you just have open space, and they say, you know, tell the story, use movement to tell the story on this open space, I just find that really exciting.
It's also exciting for singer Sarah Coit, who has a trousers role in Romeo and Juliet, which means she plays a male character.
Very typical in opera. I'm what's called a mezzo-soprano, and that is very, very common. A lot of mezzo-soprano roles are male characters.
But what's not typical for her is having to engage in sword play.
So we went around the room the first fight rehearsal and they asked what kind of experience we had, and I was the only one who had none.
She doesn't have the specific physical vocabulary of using a sword, so that she needs to learn.
Coit sings the role of Stefano, whose antics lead into the big battle between Tybalt and Mercutio, which involves chorus members running around as the panicked crowd. That's why Schultz-Carlson holds a fight call before every performance.
In the Tybalt-Mercutio fight, we've got about 40 people running full speed in different interlocking patterns around the stage, so it's all complicated. Everybody has to do their job right. So before every performance, we run all of that at half speed and just check in, and then we run it at full speed, so that when we get in performance, then they've tried it that night.
Choreographing a fight for opera requires working closely with the conductor, in this case Eva Bell, and the score.
the music gives you a lot of the story that you want to tell. For instance, in this piece, the music gives you exactly when you want the stabs to happen. They give you, because there's musical moments that you have to hit, which is really fun. For instance, which chord specifically, there's several chords at the end of the Tybalt-Mercutio fight that could be the final stab where Mercutio gets stabbed, and you've had a strong opinion about that, and I'm always happy to defer on musical questions to the maestro.
The challenge is that the fight choreography may not be played out at full speed until just before opening, which means some tweaking may be needed at the last minute, says conductor Abel.
In the end, of course, everything has to fit into my tempo. So the speed of the music. And so if we find in the last stages that there just isn't enough music, let's say, to cover all of the different moves of the battle, then of course something has to be cut. And it won't be the music.
Can we try that one more time? Abel collaborates with Schultz Carlson, director Ozawa, and especially the singers to make sure that the opera comes together in the best way possible.
It's my job also to push the limits as much as possible. I feel strongly about that, to see how far a singer can go, sometimes to the point where they look at me like they want to, hit me or something, but never past that point. But I believe very strongly that going to that limit is what creates great performances.
And going to the limit of one's passion is at the heart of the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And San Diego Opera's Romeo and Juliet has 4 performances starting tomorrow at San Diego Civic Theater. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.